So that hydrochar goes to the gasification system. That gasification system provides us with thermal energy and electrical energy. This is the load, parasitic load of the HTC reactor from the gasification. This is the parasitic load of vacuum distillation from gasification. This hydrochar, after you've gasified this for energy, this is your net electrical and thermal energy outputs. So you're putting out 2,200 megawatt hours of electrical energy and 2,200 megawatt hours of thermal energy. That thermal energy can be used for other things. It can be used for district heating. It can be used to dry your hydrochar. Or what we're actually experimenting with now with our farm is we're putting that thermal energy through absorption chillers to create cooling, to actually cool the building. So here's the addition. We need 91 tons of sulfuric acid to make 170 tons of ASL. Ammonium sulfate, nitrogen-based fertilizer. You can go buy it at your local Walmart. It's $75 for a 50-pound bag. And then we have 2,400 tons of concentrate for sell out into the horticulture, agriculture, or landscaping industries. And then we have 5,440 tons of water. It's a little over 2 million gallons. And then these are our emissions. So on the gasification side, we do have CO2 and CO emissions. But again, these are biologic in nature, so they're not connected to the problems with global warming and with climate change. And we're currently working on doing stack testing for emissions here. They're more on the NOx precursors, so ammonia being emitted through there.
Well, what would be the composition of the concentrate? What is it, and what are the concentrations?
It's before you came in, it's difficult to handle that because of our omnivore approach. We're getting a variety of materials day in, day out. So what you're getting there are you're getting things like potassium, you're getting the minerals, but it's not like we can really figure out. That's one of our challenges, to figure out how do you homogenize that concentrate. Because one day you may be getting dairy products, the next day you may be getting vegetables, the next day you may be getting meats. And how do you flatten that out to come up with a consistent basis? That's one of our challenges. So this is our home. We're in Spring City. I included this picture too. So Spring City is 25 miles outside of Philadelphia, west of Philadelphia. This is our building. We have a 4-acre footprint here. We have both of these lots here. This is our wonderful local treatment plant that we work with. But this is the size of the building to go into the vertical farm. So in this building, on the basement floors where we bring in the food waste, we process it, we gasify it for electricity, and then we grow produce on the second and third level. So there's a physical barrier between the two. Our process is a closed process. So we take in through vacuum trucks. These are tankers. We go and pick up the food waste, and we process it here. So there's no odors, there's no vectors, there's no nothing. You don't smell anything other than the exhaust from the tank as it's or tanker truck as it's unloaded. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about vertical farming. So we decided to trade electrons for produce. And essentially we're trading electrons for ounces. And that has to do with the economics of this. So selling energy on the grid in Pennsylvania, you're going to get 4 cents a kilowatt. That's the wholesale prices that PICO will pay you for energy that you're putting on the grid, unless you do some power purchase agreement. Well, most of those industries and institutions that want to be green have already purchased most of their renewable energy through power purchase agreements. To me, it's a great thing. It's a little bit of whitewashing, I think. Because the fact that you're purchasing electrons coming out of a wind farm in Kansas and you're using them in Pennsylvania, those are not the renewable electrons you're using. You're still using the electrons coming from the coal-fired power plants or the nuclear plants. So the benefits of vertical farming, we're able to produce all year long. We have a controlled environment. We're at 90% less water use. We're at 99% less land use. We use no pesticides, no herbicides. So there's no chemicals in this process other than our nutrients for water solution. We grow both hydroponically and aeroponically. All the pictures that you'll see here are in our facility. So this is one of our aeroponic setups. This is a pod, so it has 80 square inches of footprint. It has 8 vertical columns, and it will produce 780 heads of lettuce. I'm going to use head of lettuce. We produce other things, herbs and basils and things like that, but all of our units that's our functional unit for all of our LCAs and everything is a head of lettuce. So I use head of lettuce as being ubiquitous for any green. So this, in one of our rooms, so what we do is we build contained rooms of 2,000 square feet within that building so that we can control the exact temperature, humidity conditions that are optimal for that variety of plant. So spinach likes it cold. Spinach likes at about 40% humidity and about 62 degrees. Lettuce is 65 to 72 degrees, and it likes it about 50 to 60% humidity. Anything over that, so this is our lettuce room, this is our spinach room, this is our arugula room, this is our basil room. One room will produce 700 heads of lettuce every day, 365 days a year. Our total capacity is 2.6 million heads of lettuce per year in a square foot footprint that's a quarter acre. That's the equivalent of having a 300-acre farm, the output. So we don't worry about climate change because we control the climate. We play God in a little bit. We don't worry about droughts. We don't worry about cold snaps, anything like that. And we're able to repurpose old buildings and old structures. So what's ubiquitous in every town, every city in America is that you have these former factories that are now unoccupied, unused. Rather than consuming all the raw material to build a new building, you go in and you retrofit an existing building, existing warehouse. So you're making use of what's already there. So again, a big believer in failures. These are our failures. It's really easy to grow crops. You just throw some water in, throw some lights on, put your seeds in, and you're good to go. It's not that easy. Believe me, we failed a lot of times. And this is what your failures look like. This actually is romaine. This is romaine that's bolted. This is romaine that was grown at 85 degrees and it didn't like the heat. And it didn't have enough calcium in the water, so it bolted. This is what romaine looks like in the foods. Here you have another nutrient deficiency. This is a potassium deficiency in your lettuce. And what you get these wrinkled discolorations within it. And then over on the right, this is a butterhead lettuce, Boston Bib. But here you see tipper. This is tipper because the calcium was absorbed all within the first 4 weeks, or first 24 days of growth. And there was no calcium in our solution for the last 14 days, so the tips crinkled in on themselves. Biological structure starts to break down because of lack of calcium. This is what our successes look like. Over here you have, this is a variety of romaine, a red romaine. These are all Boston Bibs. And then these are varieties of the lettuce called salad. So most of you are familiar with the 5 or 6 lettuce types you get. Iceberg, romaine, spinach, frisee. There are over 70 varieties of lettuce. Some of these you've never tasted. I can tell you these Salanovas here are absolutely phenomenal. that's when we sell our produce to restaurants and to dining services. The students tell us, this is better than any lettuce we've ever tasted before. And what I tell them is because you've never tasted fresh lettuce before. The lettuce you're getting in the grocery store, the Publix, or the around here is 10 days old before it even gets to the store. How many of you have bought lettuce on Sunday and you go to make a salad on Wednesday and the lettuce is gone? Yeah, that's because that lettuce is 20 days old. That's what they don't tell you. So our lettuce is harvested in at 5 o'clock in the morning and it's consumed at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're eating lettuce that's 5 years old, or 5 hours. So what does it take to grow this lettuce? This is what it takes. 7.3 kilowatts, 1.1 gallon of water, 2 ounces of fertilizer, and 33.6 pounds of food waste.
For how much?
For 1 head of lettuce. So that food waste, 33.6 pounds of food waste, gives us enough energy to run our HTC process, our vacuum distillation process, our gasification process, and grow 1 head of lettuce. So when you scale that up to 10,000 tons, that's 600,000 heads of lettuce without using any outside energy source. Only embedded energy in that food waste. So real quickly, I'll go through the LCA results. What this is energy consumption, and it's comparing traditional lettuce cultivation with indoor. And we're using HTC as our energy source. So here you see our impacts. We had it normalized to conventional to 100% on the top to even show our impacts. And then on the bottom, it's denormalized. Right now, our biggest thing is in carcinogens, and that's from the fossil fuel and the emissions from our trucks. I'm waiting for Mr. Musk to build an electric big rig so I can deliver this, or a reefer truck.
Use biodiesel.
Yeah.
Until we get there.
So this is just in graphical form. So what you're seeing here is our change in emissions. The one to point out here is CO2. We're 97.5% less CO2 emissions than conventional farming. So real quickly, why are we doing this? Because we're reducing the supply chain. So 90% of all lettuce produced in the United States is produced in Salinas Valley, California, and Yuma, Arizona. Those are traveling 2,000 miles to get to. For us, it's closer to 3,000 miles to get to Villanova University. Round trip from our facility to Villanova is 35 miles. It's actually 22 miles, 35 minutes. So we're shrinking that supply chain down. And then this is what it looks like on transportation by shrinking that supply chain. So again, you're looking at CO2 emissions is a 91% reduction. So our lettuce is 91% less carbon footprint than traditional lettuce you buy in the store. Because of this closed loop in recycling nutrients, recycling energy from organic resources. This is our team. So we have 3 lead principal investigators, PhDs. Ross Lee is our lead investigator. He comes out of 35 years of materials and R&D experience from DuPont. Justinian Satrio is pyrolysis thermal biomass conversion expert. So we recall him. He's also from Iowa State. And then Metin Duran, civil and environmental engineering and focusing on anaerobic digestion. We use anaerobic digestion as a potential for us to process that process water, get the remaining 3% of carbon out into biomethane and use that biomethane to run the HTC process. And then these are our researchers. So Jeremy Taylor is a chemical engineer, master's degree. He's actually graduating and then joining us at SoMax, and then he is pursuing his PhD. So he's done all the work on HTC. His thesis is on the socioeconomic value of HTC at wastewater treatment plants. Adam is a mechanical engineer, and his focus was on vertical farming. So he's the one that grows all those beautiful lettuce. along with Lee Zhu, who is an alum of this program. And then Philip Armstrong is doing all of our LCA work. And so we're finalizing this through to the vacuum distillation. I tried to get that data in this before I left, but they told me that the system was down, but that I would be pleasantly surprised with the impact of vacuum distillation by an offset of fossil synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. And it's through fossil fuel depletion, because the way they make synthetic nitrogen is they crack methane and all the emissions and everything associated with that. So I'm looking at our LCA results to actually improve and get even better than they are now. With that, this is, I did forget to bring business cards, but this is my contact information. If you want to take a picture of the screen, you can reach out to me if there's any questions. And so now I think we'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you. Great information, this is real world stuff. So, questions from the students here? Yes?
Hi.
Hi.
I want to know what the next step is for SoMax. What are y'all working on that maybe will be in the presentation next year?
Process optimization, and really what we're focused on next is now commercialization and expansion. So our first commercial HCC unit is going to be installed at a local wastewater treatment plant this year. Next year, we're looking at installing our first satellite food waste facility. Proving that market now allows us to go nationwide. We have to fine tune what our strategy is, whether we're going to do regional deployment or we're going to do east and west coast deployment and then fill in. That's to come. But so maybe not next year, but within the next 3 years, you're going to start seeing these pop up. And to give you an idea, in the Philadelphia metro area, there's 1.7 million tons of food waste. That means you could theoretically put in 1,700 of these HTC units at 10,000 tons spread throughout the city, processing this material on site. That's our goal.
So do you prefer having a lot of smaller facilities rather than expanding the one?
For speed to market perspective, yes. Overall, no. You would do a combination of both, where you'd have larger facilities. Once in Pennsylvania and most states, they have certain thresholds. If you're expanding over 50,000 tons, for example, it requires a whole other set of permits, and those are individual permits that can take up to 3 years to get. So speed to market, we could start plopping these in shopping centers and in industrial areas all across the community, and then expansion into places like Florida. Because I'm sure that your lettuce here is coming from the West Coast, or it's actually probably coming from Honduras or Colombia. It's a little too humid in Florida to grow lettuce, unless they're doing it indoors.
Again, just to follow up to this, so a 10,000 ton unit, what is the cost, capital cost of it?
So the unit itself, 1.5 million. The entire system that's set up here, you're looking at 5 million capital costs plus whatever your building costs are. But in our area, we have a tip fee of $50. So that's $500,000 in revenue just for taking in the waste. And then based on those products coming out at a very conservative price, you're looking at $1 million in revenue with very de minimis operating costs, because you're not paying for energy, you're just paying labor, essentially labor and insurance. So you're looking at a payback within 5 years on a $5 million investment. And the lifespan of this facility is 20 to 30 years. So on that $5 million investment, you're looking at about a $15 million return. Yes.
In terms of, well, I have 2 questions. In terms of the production, just produce. So you talk about hand lettuce, and I know that you're using it as a continuous form. Is there another set of produce that you're also giving Villanova, or is it just?
Yeah, so we sell basil to them. We sell herbs, so rosemary, thyme. The biggest thing we sell them is romaine lettuce, because that's their biggest consumption. What we're trying to do is, so for us, we eliminated all their romaine consumption from California.
Mm-hmm.
We we produce about 65% of what they consume because we have not scaled all the way up yet. But yeah, it's individual items more than anything else. So we've completely replaced romaine lettuce, which is their largest. They spend $120,000 a year on romaine. Give you an idea.
Now, I might have missed it, but where do you get your food waste from?
From the university. So it's pre-consumer and it's post-consumer dining waste on campus. We don't get it from the dorms yet. So, and what they do is they use a grind energy solution from Emerson. It's an industrial scale food processor, same incinerator you have in your house. That goes into a tank, and then we haul that tank on a weekly basis to our facility.
So in your LCA, do you take the collection into consideration? Collection of the food waste
Yeah.
to your facility? Oh.
Yeah, it's included actually in that transportation, LCA. So what we've actually calculated is one empty trip each way. So we're not using the same truck to deliver produce that we are to pick up the food waste. The health authorities have an issue with that.
So I'm thinking about all of the sludge that's coming out of dredging the Hudson River and all those areas in northeast PA. And currently they treat it and then they're dumping it in quarries near where I grew up. So do you have any interest in taking that sort of waste?
We have an interest in taking any waste, but the problem is, what is the organic components of that sludge, right? And how much organics are in there versus inorganics versus minerals and things like that. We have to do some small scale testing to see if it would even be viable for this process.
What percentage of organics you want to see at the minimum?
We want to see about 20% carbon, and that's what gets us our carbon. Carbon is the most important thing that we're after, but we want to see about a 20% organics load. So when we actually take in sewage sludge, for example, it is 80% water and it's 20% sludge, and we're able to process that. This all does need to be in an aqueous solution. But what that does is that saves us the input process energy for drying it. So if you're going to incinerate waste or you're going to just gasify biosolids, for example, 60% of your energy consumption is just to drive off the moisture. So it's a very inefficient means of doing it, and that's why we take it in wet. And that's one of the big benefits of HTC versus other technologies.
I think I might have missed it. I was listening for it. What is starting the HTC reactor? Like, what is the energy source that is fueling the beginning of the process?
So the beginning of the process, we need 10 megawatt hours of energy to start it. Once it's started, it's a self-fulfilling, self-feeding process. So you could use a diesel generator. We just use the grid to start it, and we use electrical energy. So it is that initial 5 megawatt hours to get it started until you can build up a steady supply of hydrochar. And once you're gasifying that hydrochar, you're producing enough energy to run the entire process on its own, and then you're net exporting energy. So that's a perfect point. What this leads to is this could be decentralized and can be grid independent. So you could set up a facility anywhere. You don't need a high energy connection. You don't need any of that. You need a diesel generator for a week to process it, and then it runs on its own.
So Villanova is your biggest or your only client right now?
They're our biggest client. We have 5 restaurants, and what we're looking to do now is to extend this to other universities and institutions within the Philadelphia area. So Philadelphia has 44 colleges and universities, and we're looking to extend to all those as well.
Yeah, we've got 40,000 students here.
Yeah, but it's one of those where a lot of people don't want to be a leader. They want to be on cutting edge, but not bleeding edge. So they want to see this work with Villanova for a year before they're ready to start sending us their waste.
What about your hydrochar?
The hydrochar is all gasified right now, and it's used to grow produce and to power the building.
Okay, and what about the other, the fertilizer?
The fertilizer is being sold at a local horticulture center, and then the water, the distilled water, is actually just being sent down the sewer.
Okay, so your biggest product is the food that you produce?
The biggest product, yeah, is the food that we produce right now. But as we scale up, it'll actually be the others. It'll be the ammonium sulfate and it'll be the nutrients.
Then what about the pricing of the produce? You sell it to the university, and is it close? Is it
It's organic pricing, but what we've done is we've gone to a product as a service model. So Villanova pays a flat fee on an annual basis, and they get everything that's grown out of those rooms that they're essentially leasing from us. So we turned it from being, oh, you're going to pay this per head of lettuce and this per pound of waste, and said, here's what this service is per year, and you get the benefits of all of it. So if you were to actually break that down into a unit price, they're probably paying $3.20 per head, and organic they pay $3.50 a head, so it's slightly less than the organic price.
What's the difference between you taking the waste and then other waste companies? Like, what's the price difference? Why are colleges not wanting to give you their waste?
It's not that they don't want to give us the waste, it's that they want to see this process. And that what they do right now is compost, and composting's worked. But until, again, it's proving this new technology, then they come on board, because we actually have better carbon footprint benefits or carbon reduction benefits for the university at this point. So really nascent technology. The HGC process itself was first discovered in 1913, lost to history, rediscovered in 2006. So it's 12 years old. So that is in its infancy compared to anaerobic digestion has been around for 100 years. Composting has been around for several millennia. But once we prove it, and it's been proven over the last 10 years in Europe and in Asia, just not in the United States. Our facility is the first commercial facility, and then we'll have the first industrial facility in the United States this year. Yes?
In terms of competitiveness in the fuel industry, have you guys thought about the pricing for hydrocar, or have you really thought about any kind of method of, I don't know, like, I mean, you talk in terms of replacing the coal money plant down here. Is there any plans to kind of make that more of a competitive?
No, and the reason for that is we don't want to be selling coal for combustion. So what we want to do is we actually want to take this and upgrade it to advanced materials, and that's where my focus is on developing those products. So the economics of coal, for example, right now coal sells for $40 a ton. So if I sold all my coal, I make 20 grand. Even if I just put it out on the grid at wholesale rates, I'd still make 100 grand there. But what I'm doing is I'm offsetting it. So I can sell it to the grid for 5 cents, and I pay 11 cents to pull off. So what I'd rather do is I'd rather use that energy source. And that's when I said we're changing electrons for produce. So that was really, we came about this in that fashion of what's the best use of this hydrochar. We would like to sell it if it was a price on carbon, because again, this is carbon free, so you reduce all of your carbon dioxide emissions from that coal-fired power plant. If the clean power plan was still in play and companies are facing hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade, well, if you need that 30% reduction, just supplement your additional coal use with 30% of hydrochar, and you're going to pay a premium for it. You're going to pay me, $500 a ton. But what we're focused on is getting into these advanced materials, because not only does it improve the economics, and I'll give you those in a second, but it goes from being carbon neutral to carbon negative, and now you're a carbon sink. So when we look at $240 for a ton of hydrochar to sell it as coal, you're looking at $1,200 to $1,400 to sell it as activated carbon, and you're looking at $20,000 per ton if you're selling it as a carbon nanosheet or a carbon nanotube, those advanced materials. So if you can achieve that on that same $5 million investment, you're making now, what's 20 million? 20,000 times 15,000. You're making like $20 million a year. $30 million a year. So your payback's in months rather than years. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.